All right, everybody, welcome to the What's on the Line podcast, episode 13. We're here tonight to talk about Fletcher's Cove, the Tidal Potomac Slam, and shad fishing. But first, here we are, March 31st, the last day of the month. I want to give you a couple updates about CCA. If this is your first time listening along or viewing, we are CCA Maryland, the Coastal Conservation Association. My name is David Sikorsky, the executive director and the host of the What's on the Line podcast. So in 2021, we came to this live streaming format. We generally stream on the last Thursday of the month, but this month we decided to skip it to this last Wednesday for a couple different reasons. We have one exciting thing happening tomorrow, and one thing that's important but a little tough for some anglers to swallow. So the first thing, the tough to swallow piece, is that tomorrow, effective tomorrow, there's no targeting of striped bass in Maryland waters of the Chesapeake Bay. These fish are not allowed to be pursued anymore by recreational anglers, and there's no commercial season. These fish are in decline. There's a lot of concern about the future of striped bass, and we all have a concern about the future of the Chesapeake Bay as a whole. It is tough to be put off the water, especially in a period of time when we know catch and release fishing does not have a major impact on these fish, and we know that the rivers where they spawn are already closed to fishing in Maryland's portion of those rivers. But it is time to do what's right by the fish. Leave these stripers alone. Let's hope they have a great spawn this year. Hopefully today's rain and some of that snow we had this year will lead to a productive spawn for these fish and others. The topic of tonight, the shad. All right, so another thing I want to talk about tonight is that launches tomorrow that's exciting is the Great Chesapeake Invasives Count. So I hope you saw some of this last year. What I'm sharing now on the screen is our website. So this is ccamd.org/count. And you can hop on here and find out everything about this event. It's an iAngler-based citizen science. We'll call it a research tournament. And so using iAngler, anglers are going to go out into the waterways and pursue our three major invasive species in the state, and that is northern snakeheads, blue catfish, and flathead catfish. And before folks say, well, what's invasive mean? We like snakeheads. Bass don't belong here, either. There's a lot of debates we can always have around fisheries and what people want to see as outcomes. But from a scientific perspective, that's the way we approach this issue. And we know that angling, it's a blast to catch some of these fish. It's great to eat them. And people are going to have all sorts of different opinions on how we manage these fish, just like any fish. It's tough to manage fisheries in a public resource. But with invasive species, we're asking folks to participate in this event for free, to supply pictures of the fish they catch against a ruler. Let us know what water body they were in. The iAngler app actually allows you to include your GPS location automatically, just like many things on your phone these days. So you can actually just report that. What we're doing is providing that data. We remove your personal contact information or personal name from the data, and we provide it to fishery managers. Because no matter what you want the outcome to be for something like a snakehead or a blue catfish, whether you think they're good, bad, invasive, not invasive, the bottom line is we need science to lead our management. That's how agencies like Maryland DNR work, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the U.S. GS. I just saw a great post from Maryland Fisheries Service today about a tag study related to blue catfish in the Patuxent River. So biologists were out there in the rain trying to track down these fish and understand their movements. So this event is a citizen science approach to help you answer those questions. And of course, you can catch blue catfish at Fletcher's Boathouse on the Potomac River. There are snakeheads in the DC area as well. So we're going to talk about that as well. From an ecosystem perspective, there's no question that people have concerns about the impact they'll have on forage fish, competing with their natural species, eating our natural species, eating important things like crabs and juvenile shellfish and the things that blue catfish are known to eat. We know that snakeheads are creating an impact in different ways in different places. So we're going to talk about that. And starting April 1st tomorrow through October 31st, what you can do is hop on here, ccamd.org/count, and find out how you can participate. You can find out the distinction between invasive and non-native, because those are two very different things, and find out more about the species that we ask you to pursue. In fact, there's a nice poster related to Maryland DNR's tagging program that I mentioned about their post earlier today. We've also translated this poster into Spanish, and we'll be doing a lot of multi-language outreach throughout this program to connect with all anglers who are enjoying our resource and should understand the various positives and negatives of these fish in our resource. So check out this page, and more importantly, we want you to become a promotional partner. Whether you're somebody that just has a passion for fishing and shares it on your social media platform, if you have a community you're connected with, if you're a tackle shop, If you click this button and become a promotional partner, it'll actually give you a form and a chance to understand what we're looking for. But the whole idea is, understand what we're looking for, and then go to the bottom and become a promotional partner. And look at that, I found a typo. I have to fix that. So come on here, this will come to me to connect with me, and we can talk about the way that we can work together. We want to promote other people's events. This is not a fishing tournament. This is not a competition. This is free. If you're doing something related to snakeheads and blue cats and educating anglers, flatheads, we want to connect with you. You're going to see stuff about great ways to cook these fish. We've got Traeger grills on board and lots of other great friends. And we couldn't do it without the support of our friends at Yamaha Marine. They are supporting this through their Yamaha Right Waters program and make it possible for us to connect with you each and every day on these important issues. So again, make sure you head over to ccamd.org/count, which is at the bottom in the ticker right now, and check it out. It starts tomorrow, but we have basically all year long, all the way to Halloween, to log catches, and you can win prizes for doing so. That's what the promotional partners are bringing to the table. So we're going to have a lot of fun and celebrate fishing. So it's March. We're in a rainy day in the spring out there. And what better place to go fishing than somewhere like Fletcher's Boathouse in DC? So I want to bring in all of our guests all at once, because all three of you have a great connection to our nation's river and to Fletcher's Boathouse. So welcome, Alex, Andrew, and Rob. Alex, starting at the top, why don't you give us an intro about what you do and the great place that you get to work, and then we'll intro Andrew and Rob.
So I'm Alex Binstead, and I am the manager at Fletcher's Boathouse at the moment. I have been working there this is year number 19 now, and have been going there for my whole life. And fishing there since I could hold a fishing rod. So it means a lot to me to work there and have the opportunity to still fish there every day. And I was fishing this morning, as I usually do on any March morning.
Show off.
Yeah, well, sometimes I go back and forth whether it's really cool that I still work there or if it's pathetic. In the springtime, I think it's still pretty cool.
Well, I tell you, it's all about the glory of working in the fishing business or the industry. And I work, of course, in conservation on behalf of rec anglers. And I tell people all the time, man, I talk about fishing every day, but I just don't get to go anymore. And it is what it is. I mean, it's a labor of love, no matter what job, or, it is a labor of love for guys like us, and all jobs have their pluses and minuses. So it's great to know that there's a knowledgeable guy who obviously knows the area, right?
Yeah. We'll call my fishing trips research, and billable hours, we'll call it.
Well, you'll be logging catch for the invasives count, right? If you stumble upon any of those big blue cats that are out there.
Plenty of blue cats, yeah, and flatheads now.
Fantastic. All right, so Andrew, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what brings you here tonight? And
so Andrew Reichert, I'm the president of National Capital Trout Unlimited and the founder of the Tidal Potomac Slam fishing tournament, which we'll talk about more later.
Absolutely. Fantastic event that CCA Maryland's really, really proud to be part of. And you guys have a tremendous lineup of partners, sponsor organizations. It's kudos, and my hat's off to you for championing that work with and bringing those partners together. Rob, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Hey there, my name is Rob Catalanato. I work for Trout Unlimited in the Government Affairs Department, so do advocacy related to cold water fisheries. And then I also grew up in Washington, D.C. One of my first jobs ever was at the Boathouse. A younger Alex Binstead was my manager. And it was there that, I learned how to fish. And otherwise, I would have just been kind of like a kid that lived in Washington, D.C. But because I got out at Fletcher's, I learned about fishing. From there, it opened my eyes to conservation and environmentalism. So, that has sort of led me to where I am today. In terms of my job, I think Fletcher's is, important in my life personally, but what's so cool about it is that it means that same sort of thing to so many people, and it's sort of just a window to the outdoors. So really happy to be here tonight.
That's fantastic. I'll tell you, I live in Baltimore City, and there's lots of different places that can connect people living in an urban setting to the water here. And, those are all the diamonds in the rough in all of our urban centers that are fortunate enough to be on the waterways. So while cities on waterways aren't always great for the waterways, they surely bring about anglers like you that are passionate about conservation in our future. And so we have that in common, and it's great to hear your connection to the river, to the boathouse, and so Fletcher's. It obviously has a very long history. I want to say that I have the website up right here, and I also just put in the chat, everybody, a reminder that I forgot when we opened the podcast tonight. You can chat with us live. You can ask questions as we get going. So do that in the chat function for Facebook. Just post a reply in the feed that you're watching. And YouTube, if you're logged into your Gmail or logged into YouTube in another way, you can chat in that function as well. And we can pop it right up on the screen and work through some of your questions as we get moving forward. So Fletcher's, what you're looking at here is the boatingindc.com website. And so that's one place that you can find information about boating opportunities in the District of Columbia, and more about Fletcher's Boathouse, a place that you really need to go. So Alex, what for folks that have never been to Fletcher's, what is it all about? And then let's talk a little bit about the history that's kind of led up to today.
Well, in the springtime, all the history kind of comes alive because we've been around for around 150 years now, and as some sort of boat livery where you could rent a rowboat, much like the ones pictured on that website. But historically, it was a very ripe fishing ground for early Native Americans. They did a archaeological dig right outside the shop at the boathouse a number of years ago now, a couple decades ago. But they found silos where Native Americans would have stored herring that they had netted for consumption later on in the year. The reason it is such a prolific fishing ground is we're about 1.5 miles below Little Falls, which is the fall line on the Potomac. So all these anadromous fish, 90% of them aren't going to go past that point. So they get kind of stacked in like cordwood, if you will. The shad and the herring and then the striped bass they don't spawn up there, but they're certainly there feeding. Mm-hmm. And it's just a very diverse section of the river because you have now smallmouth bass and snakeheads and largemouth bass, and it's everything kind of mixes together in this 1 mile stretch that Fletcher's is located on, and we are not located there by coincidence. We'll put it that way.
Right. It's amazing how we continue to find what past civilizations or past groups of people, past generations use something, and even when we may not even know about it, it's amazing to me how we keep repeating the use of these resources in the same way that it used to. Of course, with technology and information sharing the way we have, I think our impact on the resource is clearly greater than what it used to be, and we have to really be cognizant of that. So Fletcher's as an access point, Rob was talking about growing up in the city and seeing it as an access point. Let's talk about a little bit some of the issues facing it, because I pulled up the Friends of Fletcher's Cove website, and Rob, I know you're a part of this, and the Tidal Potomac Slam is here to support the Friends of Fletcher's Cove. So maybe we'll highlight some of the issues and direct some folks to where they can find out more about Fletcher's and what has affected it. Because if I understand correctly, the slides that are showing right now, relate to some of the changes in that river. The river is obviously a living, breathing thing that changes year to year. So what's changed so much, and how's it changed the access point?
Yeah. So, like Alex is saying, historically over generations, Fletcher's has just been a very reliable place to get your boat out or, reach those fertile fishing grounds. And in large part, that's because of just the physical structure of the cove. So it provides just a harbor to get out. And, I wonder if these pictures, I know they're kind of cycling through, but there's,
I was going to say, I'm going to try and pause
if you can get to the overhead. Yeah. So that shot right there really,
hold on, I'm going to try and turn off the loop, turn off the autoplay.
Yeah.
Watch this. Not bad.
Yeah.
Live TV, folks. Go away. There we go.
So,
all right. Perfect.
Aerial photo from 1955 versus 2007. You can see that really stark contrast. Over the years, sediment has piled up in the cove, and what used to be sort of a natural process that would allow the cove to flush itself out has basically been cut out of the equation. And you can see basically on the upstream side of the cove, so the right side of those two pictures, there's that little spit of land there. And basically, there used to be these channels that ran through that upstream little formation. So when the river flooded, the water would enter those channels, get pressurized, and basically push out whatever had accumulated there since the last high water event. And in the 1960s, right, pre any environmental laws, unfortunately, there was a project where there's a lot of fill, dirt that was left over, and it was dumped right above the cove on that bit of land. So I think my guess is that it was done with good intentions. Maybe it was, we can put this here and it'll protect access for years to come. But what it did was exactly the opposite, and basically filled in those little cuts and created a natural impediment, essentially, or an unnatural impediment that blocked the natural process. Right. So now we just have this sediment that's constantly accumulating in the cove, and no real good way to clean it out. So what the Friends of Fletcher's Cove is doing is, one, and then this is before I got involved, Mike Bailey, who maybe some of the listeners know, and definitely all the Fletcher's Cove people are aware of. Mr. Mike Bailey was one of the first people to sort of start this advocacy mechanism to, one, identify what is the real problem, two, how are we going to address that problem, and three, like, who are the folks that'll make it happen for us. So the Friends of Fletcher's Cove is looking for a way to basically restore the river to its natural function around Fletcher's, and restore that natural flushing mechanism. And that's taken, the support of the mayor in DC, of Delegate Norton, of a number of senators and other members of Congress, to all try to coalesce behind this idea. And now what we're doing is looking for the appropriate funding to actually do the project itself.
Absolutely. So reverse that wrong that happened so many years ago and has impacted the cove ever since. And so looking at these aerial photos here, you see the dock in the 2007 version. Alex, I see the boats all lined up. Maybe this is a spring picture, and they just got a nice fresh coat of paint, getting ready to go in the water.
Yep.
Explain to us how, during your time there over 19 years, how's the cove changed in your time, and how does that affect your day-to-day and really the access for anglers? How does it limit them and impact them?
Well, right now, when I was a kid, before I worked there, you could walk onto the dock, which was a lot smaller at the time, and there was water around the whole thing. And if you stepped off the dock, you were in water over your head.
Like in this area where I'm going, where the cursor is. Yeah.
And obviously, if you're in water that deep, you can float a boat out there, no problem. Now that as the silt builds up, it just is just a snowball effect. It just collecting more as the silt gets higher, it has more surface area, and the problem just gets exponentially worse. And we've had to increase the size of the dock. We've had to move it out. We're chasing deeper water at this point, and we're running out of water to chase. And my third day of the season, which was Monday, we opened last Saturday. My third day of the season, the tide, it wasn't a particularly low tide, but the sediment has built up so much that we could not get boats in or out at low tide. And it's just frustrating if we have a very short fishing window for the season where the shad are around. And if you can't, you lose a day and you lose a day.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And so so let's talk about how folks head out to Fletcher's, because up next we'll just get chatting about the tournament and the Tidal Potomac Slam. It's of course trying to help support the Friends of Fletcher's Cove to alleviate this issue and build the capacity to work on behalf of these issues from now into the future. So how do folks, like, what's the story of Fletcher's? How do we go ahead and get a boat? Any tips for folks, the best way to reserve one and get out on the water?
So our boats this year are partial reservation and partial walk-up. It's largely walk-up business at this point. We put reservations in place last year as a response to COVID to space people out and avoid crowding. So we're keeping some of that in this new system and allowing walk-ups as well. It's been it worked well last summer, and we're working through some kinks now. But you can either reserve on the website again or walk up.
Fantastic. So boatingindc.com, you'll see the Boathouses section in Fletcher's Boathouse, and also Friends of Fletcher's Cove. So folks, after this, go ahead and check out both of these websites and find lots of information about it. And we'll close the night with some other information about Friends of Fletcher's Cove and how you can take action to help. But talking about taking action to help, Andrew, the chapter president of the National Capital Chapter of Trout Unlimited. I know you're just an obsessed and talented angler. Loves to get on these. If it's a river, you're going to fish it, right? So, what inspired you to bring about the Tidal Potomac Slam for the third year?
Well, while I'm flattered, Dave, I don't know that I would describe myself as an exceptionally talented angler. As I went out with Alex last week, and it's a learning curve how to fish at Fletcher's. He's the expert, but I'm very much still a novice about fishing at Fletcher's. Shad I'm a little more comfortable with, but the other species that Alex has really dialed in, I'm still very much learning how to do that.
You mean like this massive striped cow here that I think, is that Remick holding that, or no?
No, that is one of Remick's best friends, though, Connor Donovan. Who is the repeat? He's the only champion of the Tidal Potomac Slam so far. He's won every year, but his claim to fame is that he caught the fish that was on national news out of Fletcher's a couple years ago. Huh. I had friends texting me from Seattle, Washington, asking me if I knew the guy who caught the fish in D.C.
Rowing the boat.
Yeah, Alex was really the one responsible for that fish.
Wait. So is there a secret to get Alex to guide you? Do you just have to show up early and bring a friend?
You gotta earn it, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Going fishing with Alex is like I don't know, going on a spiritual retreat with Gandhi or something. You gotta put your time in before you get that kind of privilege.
If Gandhi yelled at you every time you got snagged.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't think Gandhi yelled it much, right? That was the whole point. So, well, all right.
I meant to say the Dalai Lama, but it's close. Well, not
either
close
or
enough.
Peace, tranquility. The same theme here.
Either way, yeah. So I started the tournament. Actually, it was Remick's idea. Remick Smothers, for those of you who don't know, is a former, longtime DC area fly angler.
That's him right there, right?
Yeah, that's Remick right there. Who now lives in Utah, but once upon a time, he was part of Alex's Fletcher's crew, and he and I talked about doing a fishing tournament to raise a little bit of money for Friends of Fletcher's Cove, and really more for a awareness campaign. And so the tournament's changed from the original blueprint he kind of came up with, but it's really more of a public awareness, social media kind of driven event. And its real goal is to generate public support and a constituency to the legislators that Rob and others sort of target to demonstrate the support of the recreational fishing community. And one of the things that's been really great is, it keeps growing. So year one, it was, Dave, it was you at CCA Maryland, NCCTU, and our local Fly Fishers International Club, TPFR. And then it's grown to include Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, a couple other CCA and TU chapters, our local smallmouth club. And then, we're hoping that next year, this year we were a little behind the eight ball, but hopefully next year we'll actually get both Bass Nation Virginia and Bass Nation Maryland involved. So we'll have literally every single fishing club within an hour drive, basically, of DC involved in the tournament. And it's been really, really awesome to get the support from different groups and see people kind of buy in to the model. We're not going to raise enough money to save the Cove, raising like $500 to $1,000 a year. So it's really much more about getting people behind the efforts that Rob and others at FFC are doing.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, when I was in school for engineering, I had a professor that would give us these like proverbs, and this is corny, but he used to say, in the battle of the rock and the river always wins, not through strength, but through persistence. And it always stuck out to me. Of course, I'm an angler, and I get what the power of water, right? But it's the truth, and that's what this is. Every little bit of constant just pressure to make this better is what most conservation and access movements are all about. It's people that pass the baton. The new generations always step up and take care of these things. So this is what I think we're doing here, and I'm very glad to be a part of it, and glad you brought it to CCA's attention. So when you head over to TidalPotomacSlam.org, which is scrolling at the bottom of the page right now, but TidalPotomacSlam.org, you can check out this website, and it's really simple. It's a great page put together, and kudos to NCCTU and you, Andrew, and all your partners for bringing everybody together. You can check out all the information. You can click the sign up to fish button. What that does is takes you to the iAngler tournament platform. And so our friends at the Angler Action Foundation, Brett Fitzgerald, their director, and the folks at iAngler have just been great at supporting the catch photo release format for our tournaments at CCA Maryland. And I was proud to make this connection for Andrew and the team that are leading the charge here to save the Cove. You also see in the ticker at the bottom that if you're out there fishing the Potomac, whether you participate in this event or in the tournament or not, I mean, and why wouldn't you? $10, come on. In fact, give them $50. Let's go. Let's enter and then make a donation at on the Friends of Fletcher's Cove website directly. This is all tax deductible stuff. But use the hashtag Save the Cove because you're going to get some prizes for participating, just like our invasives count. But we're going to have some fun with that all year long and support it. I know that Andrew, this year it seems like a longer fishing window than ever before. So it started March 20th. That doesn't matter. Tell us more about what folks should do throughout the period.
Well, that's the big change this year. Is it used to be a 6-week tournament, and it was really shad and striped bass focused, and we decided to kind of make it a whole season. The idea actually came from, there's a fishing tournament in Florida that lasts, I think it runs actually for 12 months because their season is so long. But the idea was 34 people will win a prize in this year's tournament. Wow. Because there's 8 species. Wild card is one of them. Just to be clear, it says common carp there, but grass carp count as well. Mm-hmm. And for sunfish, it's not just pumpkin seeds, it's bluegills, long ears, like any sunfish counts in the sunfish category. But yeah, so, and all of the, to make it a little more friendly to people fishing on foot, the entire canal up until lock 21, whichever lock is closest to Great Falls, is considered inbounds too. And we don't want to get too distracted by the canal. A lot of it's drained right now, but the parts that are watered, particularly sunfish, but and carp and snakehead are probably the species that you're going to encounter most often in the canal right now. But we incorporated the canal in part to open up more access for people who are fishing on foot.
That's fantastic. Yeah, there's tons of foot-based access down there. If you can't get the rowboat or you can't launch your kayak, I neglected to watch the comment section after telling folks to weigh in. And I just want to review a couple of these. And I will say that here you go from Mike Armstrong. I remember this area as a kid back in the 60s. The river had a strong smell and was filled with so much pollution you could almost walk across it. Really wonderful how conservation consciousness and activism has helped restore it. He loves paddling there now. Absolutely. Folks, we can improve all the tough things that we're facing. We can always, I always tell people, live on the bright side of the moon. It's a much better place to be than in the dark and in the shadows. So let's work together. And Cray Ramsey, a CCA Life member from Annapolis. Thanks for listening in, Cray. Yes, you can launch your kayak down the far end of the lower parking lot. That's what John weighed in to answer the question for us. Thank you, John. John is a tremendous resource in shad fishing. And I know Shad Night that NCCTU had a couple weeks ago was just a great presentation from John and many others. I had a couple conflicts that night, but kept logging in and listening when I could. It was a really great show. Are any of the conversations that happened at Shad Night available to view now after the fact? Are they recorded?
If you go to our website, there's a link to our YouTube channel, and it has Shad Night on it.
That's
on the YouTube channel.
ncctu.org?
ncc-tu.org, and then when you get to our homepage, you just go to on the top bar, you'll see something that says Shad. You just click on Shad, and it'll take you to that.
All right, I just did that. Put that in the chat so folks will see that are following along. And I love this logo, Shad Unlimited. Whose brainchild was that?
So that's been NCCTU's nickname for, I think, a couple decades, because we really weren't a Trout Unlimited chapter in the traditional sense. We didn't really do a lot of cold water conservation, and all of our members fish at Fletcher's. And Alex's dad, Mark, writes what's called the Shad Report, and it's actually kind of remarkable. I mean, there's like 2,000 people read every single report. That's like actual readers. It's not even just the mailing list itself. And because of Mark and Alex and others, our chapter's nickname was Shad Unlimited. So we decided, we got the all clear from TU to kind of pay an homage to the logo and make a little modification and call it Shad Unlimited. So we have you can get these stickers at any Orbis store or at District Angling. Or Alex, I don't know, are you offering them out of the Boathouse right now?
Yeah.
They're free, so just if you stop in a shop and you see one, put it on your car.
I love it. I didn't know that. And you can't see the back of my computer, but it's covered in stickers. And I do have my NCCTU sticker on there because I am a Trout Unlimited member. And I think I need to add a Shad Unlimited picture because, boy, do I love shad. So I think I see in the header picture here, somebody's doing a little double haul on a fly rod. Out on these rowboats is a great way to fly fish for shad. Let's talk about that first, because I know there's tons of folks, obviously, in the trout community that like to fly fish. Let's talk about some fly fishing tactics a little bit to give folks an idea of what they can do. Dust off their gear, head down and have some responsible recreation, be safe. We all have to still recognize all the impacts of the pandemic, but get outside and breathe some fresh air. Some of that pollen that's giving me a headache all day is surely in the air, and I think there's shad in the river. So Alex, I think you were on the water this morning. Give us a report of what you see on the river and what you might smell on the river. Are they spawning the shad, or anything happening?
There are certainly shad there. The picture on your screen there, I can tell a lot just by looking at that. That amount of boats stacked up like that means it was a good fishing day. What you're looking at in that picture is the Cove itself, where Fletcher's is located in. And there's a reason those boats are there. And like I said earlier, there's a reason that Boathouse is there. You don't have to go too far. You don't have to overthink it. That's a couple 100-yard row from the dock. So super accessible once you're in a boat. And like you said, fly rods are a great option out of the rowboats. There also is shore fishing available in the middle of that photo. The river kind of bends to the left there. There's a point there called Walker's Point. It's about a quarter mile away from the Boathouse, but that offers a great spot to fly cast from the shoreline. And fishing upstream on the shoreline is great for spinning rods, and there's a few accessible fly rod spots. And what's going on right now is a good mix of hickory and American shad. We're a couple weeks away from peak fishing, I'd say, but you could still have a 30, 40 fish day if you worked at it. I know John, who was commenting earlier, I believe had a 70 fish day under his belt this year. So If you find a fish, you can get into them pretty good right now.
So are you looking for a seam or a current break, or I know it depends on all the dimensions of what's happening now, the water flow and the height of the river as to how you access things.
A lot of factors. And one thing that makes Fletcher's a challenging place to fish, it's easy and it's hard at the same time, but there's just a lot of factors that go into it. Being a tidal river is one. You have moving tides, of course, but being so high up in the system and having the fall line 1.5 miles away, you still have a very great, just stream flow influence. And the tide interacts with that in a very kind of unique way. And when you try to think of this scenario up and down the coast, there's not many rivers that do that. But yeah, for shad fishing, you're trying to find a seam. In this photo, these guys are mostly lined up on the seam. In the cove to the left, you have slack water. On the right, you have the channel on the Virginia side, and where those two meet, you have a nice edge of current with big boils of water coming up, and that's kind of where the fish generally hang out.
So if I'm a fly angler anchored out one of the rowboats, or accessing the river in my own boat, because I know you can run up from the south or downriver side with a power boat. And
yep.
As we talked about, you can launch your own kayak. So there's a couple different ways to access the river. Let's talk about boating. You want to find a seam. You can put out an anchor, and the rowboats come with an anchor, right?
The rowboats come with an anchor. You're just getting a rock on a rope. If you bring your own anchor, prepare to potentially lose it.
Okay.
So there's a reason to our madness. And I'm sure they're using rocks on rope for a very long time there.
I bet. It seems like the eco-friendly kind of thing to do, right? So Eric Zlokovitz, who actually works for Maryland DNR, is a rec fishing outreach guy there, says great info. Any tips on shad fishing and shad lures and flies? So Eric, we're in the fly fishing discussion right now. We're kicking off. So what is the go-to for flies? And we'll get back to the other ideas.
Well, on fly tackle, one of the most critical thing is using the right line, and a full sink line is something that you need to have in your arsenal for shad fishing. The most common mistake from fly rodders that I see is a floating line. You're just not going to catch these fish. They're just lower down in the water column. Yeah. So 250 to 350 grain on a 7 weight is probably your ideal setup. You don't need to do much with a leader. You can just use a piece of straight fluorocarbon or mono, 3 feet long. And as far as flies go, number 6, number 4, something tied with flash and about 1 inch long and some sort of weight, whether it be a cone head or lead eyes. Other rivers where you might fish for shad are going to be less current or more shallow, and you would have to adjust your rig. But certainly at Fletcher's and right out front there where those rowboats are anchored, you're going to need sinking line and often even weight on your fly to just help you keep depth.
Absolutely. Well, so John says, Eric, listen to Alex. He's the man. Gold spoons have been hot this year. Andrew and Rob, do you guys have anything to add on tips that work for you? Is Alex the kind of the grand poobah of all the information here?
I mean, Alex's dad. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Rob.
Well, mine's quick. I was just going to say, if you see Alex out there, anchor as close as you can.
That's how you do not get invited in my boat.
I was going to say, are you guys friends or enemies here? I don't know about that.
Yeah, it's a good, useful rule of thumb. It's just watch Alex. He's typically he knows more than anybody else out there, except for maybe Kuriyawa's a Jedi when it comes to shad. But I was also going to say, in terms of fly fishing, Alex's dad, Mark, and the shad reports are just the absolute treasure trove of knowledge for fly fishing for shad. There's lots of great insights, and not only do we have the most up-to-date shad reports, we actually have them going back years. So you can mine those for lots and lots of data beyond what you can get from the current reports, and even John's excellent presentation this year. You can read about what people were using 3 or 4 years ago to catch shad. So I'm not a great shad fisherman. I'm a trout fisherman who's learning how to fish at Fletcher's every time I go out there.
Fantastic. Well, so I pulled up the shad reports on the ncc-tu.org website. You can sign up for the shad report right there, and this is where you're going to find the information that Andrew's mentioned a couple times related to all things shad and the archives. And then also here's John's 2-page starter kit on shad fishing that they unveiled at Shad Fest a couple weeks ago. So really, really good information there. Our good friend Bill Montgomery, who is a great friend of CCA Maryland and helping lead a lot of our fishing tournament efforts this year. Bill is the owner of Bass Candy Delights, BKD Lures. Bill's asking, how's the shad fishing away from Fletcher's, up or downstream? Any tips on where folks should try up or down?
Yep. So I mentioned Walker's Point, which is about a 1/4 mile downstream. That's almost as far as they are accessible to catch downstream. After that, the river widens out quite a bit as you get closer to Georgetown. We're only 2 miles away from Key Bridge and Georgetown, and 4 miles away from the monuments. So we're really, you may think you're out in the middle of nowhere, but you really aren't. But if you're familiar with that section of river, which you probably would be more familiar with that than Fletcher's, it's really wide down there. So you lose all this discernible current. You can't really find a seam. Fish don't hold there for any reason. So going back to why Fletcher's is where Fletcher's is, that's the whole point. Upstream, the river narrows quite a bit, and often it gets dangerous at times, especially if springtime flows. So if you choose to go up above Fletcher's, just be careful. Oftentimes you cannot get a boat successfully up there or anchor up there. So a lot of people do access it from the shoreline. You can access from Chain Bridge or the Fletcher's parking lot and walking upstream. But going up from Fletcher's is really only 1.5 miles until Little Falls, and that's where all the shads stop. So on a low water year, fishing upstream can be very productive, but just normal springtime flows, you don't have to overthink it and go too far.
Yeah, I've fished upstream of Fletcher's quite a bit, below Chain Bridge, and just seems to be the way I go. And I know folks should also be careful about stepping out on rocks that are slippery, recognizing that the tide is coming in. So when you're standing on those rocks, and it just seems like all of them are kind of angled to take you right into the river current. So be careful. I had I was there a couple, 2 springs ago with my infant son on the backpack walking out to try and catch shad. And I was there, got close to the river and went, there's no way I'm getting any closer than this. And caught about 2 fish. And I think that was the last time I was out there. But I was actually had a pretty cool story with my wife. When we first started dating, I met her in the wintertime, and in the spring I went, let's go do something fun outside. Let's go out to Fletcher's. And I threw my nieces and nephews in the car, my brother-in-law and my now wife, who I'd been dating for about 4 months, out there, and handed her a spinning rod. I was helping my little nephew learn how to cast and stuff, and I turned around and my wife was hooked a double hickory shad, and I'd seen her cast about 3/4 of the way across the river just below Chain Bridge, hook a double hickory shad and unhook him and throw him back in the water. And at this point, I don't think I had any clue that she even knew how to fish. But it turns out she grew up a surf angler's daughter, so she surely knows how to cast and handle her own fish. But this place is it's really accessible depending on conditions. That's kind of the take-home point here. I had 5-year-olds catching fish that day along with my wife, and you just have to be smart and realize that there's always some safer spots downstream. And talking to Alex and even giving a shout to the Boathouse, right? I mean, somebody could give you a call and find out conditions, or I think there's some.
Yeah, certainly. If you scroll down on that website, on the Fletcher's website, I do try to, not the Friends of Fletcher's, the Fletcher's.
Sorry about that.
You see it. So if you scroll down, I do post some fishing updates. I'd rather be fishing than putting up fishing updates. So sometimes there's a gap in it. It's more about the bite and less about the current conditions. If you go back to the Friends of Fletcher's Cove website there, and on the left where it says real-time river data, this is a very useful link. If you click on that, what did they do?
Yeah, you want to click on real-time river data.
Yeah, not the drop down.
Oh, I did the wrong click. Okay, I got you. Click right on the words real-time river data.
We have an array of graphs and data here that you can read. That first one is from NOAA, and that's the gauge and prediction at Little Falls. The yellow is action stage. So really, if that goes into the yellow, which we're projected to do because of this rain today, the river is going to be probably too muddy to fish, and there's going to be a lot of current everywhere. Where we're sitting at now, right around 4 feet, is maybe a little bit low for springtime flows, but very fishable and pretty clear. And then as you scroll down, you'll see river temperature. The start of the run, everybody's all antsy in early March waiting for that river to hit 47, 48 degrees, which is kind of where things get going. So we look at that a lot early season and a lot late season, as we expect these fish to kind of fizzle out. And then down here, that's just your CFS discharge. This one's useful. There's those little triangles. If you scroll up a little bit, there you go. Those little triangles are your average flow. So we're below average flow right now. And the next graph down is a turbidity gauge, which is not offered on every USGS site, but very handy for our our gauge at Little Falls, this is basically telling us how muddy the river is. And if it's above 10 on this, it's likely pretty murky. If it's, 6 or somewhere around there, it's very fishable. So you don't necessarily have to give us a call. You don't have to come down and be surprised. All the information is here. You just got to kind of learn how to read it. And
that's fantastic. So you just have these embedded directly from the source?
Yeah, so those are live updating, but all in one place for you.
There you go.
And one of the greatest things beyond just the Little Falls gauge data being so cleanly, if you go down, Dave, is the fact that it shows you main stem Potomac gauges going. Does it go all the way to Cumberland?
Yeah.
It goes close. Yeah.
So we can track the river. If you call me and ask me for fishing advice, I'm just looking at this stuff, and I might be able to interpret it better than you can. But we can track rainfall totals in the watershed and figure out what's coming from where, and kind of put it together along with these computer models and tell you whether it's worth fishing in the morning.
Yeah, I actually have this bookmarked on my phone, and like if I'm going smallmouth fishing further up the Potomac, I even go to this page because this gives me everything I need to know about kind of what's happening.
Heck yeah. No, I'm holding my phone right now and doing that, because I used to have every gauge on the USGS page like linked in different buttons, but this is awesome. One-stop shop, tons of great information. And I'll say this again before it's over. You're going to sign up for the Tidal Potomac Slam at tidalpotomacslam.org, and then head over here and donate. $10 for the tournament is too cheap, but we can only do that thanks to all the tremendous sponsors. And so donate as well. Support this amazing and important spot. I'm going to donate the second we're finished tonight after just remembering that cool story with my wife. So John mentioned, here's another great resource from a great sponsor. I see the name District Angling in there. So he says to find Mike Fritz. He's the friendliest fly guy out there. I assume out there on the water is where you mean, John. And then Iggy from District Angling is solid. Chat him up too. Let's talk about District Angling, an absolute gem right there in Northern Virginia. I mean, the fly fishing community is so fortunate to have Rich Farino and the team at District Angling right there, right along the river, not far from the river, relatively speaking. So they, what kind of resources are there at the shop? What should folks stop in and buy if they're getting ready to start fishing?
Well, one of the things is that if you sign up for the tournament, you get a free ruler, and those rulers are available to be picked up at District Angling. So if you have signed up for the tournament and not yet gotten a ruler, they actually roll up, so you don't have to bring, a yardstick or, a tape measure. You can go and pick one of theirs up from the shop. But yeah, Richie's been a supporter of the tournament since the very beginning.
Absolutely. What are they're not the CCA Release Sense rulers, are they?
They're the same brand, but they have DA's logo instead of CCA.
Fantastic. That's great. We have some rulers there too, and if folks participate in our tournaments, it sounds like if they're the same manufacturer, bring them on. Fish in our tournaments with them too. That's fantastic. District Angling is a great resource. Alex, go back through. I know you said a 250 to 350 grain is what the line you're looking at. John mentioned gold spoons. Do folks throw a gold spoon on a fly rod, or is that strictly a spinning rod thing?
You could. They're certainly light enough. And on spinning rods, you would use shad darts, which are essentially just jigs painted a bright color with a flash of tail, and they make them small enough to throw on a fly rod as well. So you don't necessarily have to have a fly, and I won't even consider it cheating. I won't judge you.
So is a gold spoon cheating technically? I think I saw a reaction out of a couple people when I said that.
Well, our rule for the tournament is very permissive, and that's in part a legacy of the great Remick Smothers and the Jig'ems game. But so long as you're using a fly rod, it does not actually, so long as you're not fishing with bait, but so long as you're using a fly rod, your fish is entered in the fly category. So if you have a 1.5 ounce jig head and you're using a fly rod, you technically count for the fly division.
There you go. You can actually use a BKD, our friend Bill Montgomery, on a 1 ounce jig head on a fly rod. I don't recommend it. Mike Dunlap just chimed in. I think there's an emoji in there that didn't come through, but he said chuck and duck. That is for sure. If you got a heavy fly on, any fly angler that's tried a too heavy fly or even a jig head, as just sacrilegious as that is. Watch out, it might get you. So Rob, are you a fly angler too, or what? What's your story? What's your favorite way to go after them?
I am a fly angler. I learned on the spinning rod, and right now I guess I jump back and forth. Like I tend to lean in the spinning direction for the Potomac River, especially the tidal, But if you're going upstream for smallmouth or looking for trout, I'll go with the fly rod. So I'd like to think of myself as utilitarian. Gonna use what works particularly well.
I can relate. I fall squarely in that category.
Yeah.
I don't care how I can catch it. I just want to go fishing.
In the fly line discussion, I've used the 250 before, and granted it was early season, but had trouble getting down there. So you can definitely use the 250. There's areas near Fletcher's where the river is just more shallow, and the shad tend to hang out in the upper sections of the water column. But I would be ready to go bigger if you're not hooking up and you see lots of other folks getting on with spinning rods or fly lines, because they're probably fishing a little heavier and a little deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. Right on. So there's some question and answer going on in here. I want to bring something in from Kevin McMenamin, a leader of the Annapolis Anglers Club. Kevin, it's great to have you listening in tonight. He said, I think I understand where straight bass go after the spring spawn. Do we know where the shad spend the rest of the year after the spring spawn? You guys have any ideas on this? I know a few things on this, and I've gotten involved in a few fisheries discussions on shad and bycatch and things at sea. But Alex, what do you know, or anybody else chime in?
American shad and hickory shad, for that matter, run up the coast. They start in Florida in January and then kind of work their way up, and they hit us, March, April, and then on the Delaware River a little bit later, the Connecticut River. And they get all the way up to Canada. American shad do anyway. The hickory shad kind of fizzle out basically in our neck of the woods. The Delaware River, to my knowledge, doesn't have any, and the Connecticut certainly doesn't. So a lot of that is water temperature based. After the spawn, the American shad are an ocean dwelling fish, and the hickory shad, there's not much research on them. There's a lot of history and literature behind the American shad, including John McPhee's book, The Founding Fish, which is a great read and very informative on that species. But hickory shad, not much known about them. I do know I've caught them off of a pier at Ocean City in the middle of the summer fishing for bluefish. So they kind of go in that type of water. They don't necessarily go out to the deep water of the ocean.
Yeah, the hickories are definitely known to stay with our near coastal waters, and that kind of relates to that phenomenon of folks catching them in the summertime in the coastal inlets. And I know the ASMFC does manage shad and river herrings through a management plan, a coastwide management plan. So I know there's a lot of information there at the asmfc.org that explains a lot about these fish. In past years, CCA was involved in various actions to try and protect all sorts of different forage fish from bycatch, and river herring, shad, all have a certain bycatch allowance. I'm not 100% up to speed on exactly what's happening with them right now, but I know there are some trawl fleets out in the ocean that do impact the different species in different ways, and of course the herrings as well, which are in decline and well, they're pretty much at the bottom. There's good news in some ways. I just saw last week that one of DNR's survey crews above Bloody Dam, which was removed in the Patapsco River, so coming up right by Baltimore, up into, I guess that's the Howard County-ish line or so, where Bloody Dam was. Bloody Dam's gone, and they found adult alewife herring up there recently in the survey. So if you remove it, these fish come back. It's amazing what they know and returning to their natal rivers. And that's a big part of what Maryland DNR did in the past with the shad hatchery program and some tagging efforts there. So I know there's a lot of information on ASMFC's website. I know that the vast majority of harvest or mortality on this species continues to be bycatch. There is moratorium in most states' waters. There's very select small commercial fisheries that are directed. I know in Virginia, they have a small one and maybe a couple others on the coast for these various important forage species. So there's definitely more information out there on, and these things are definitely a victim of bycatch and being harvested. But what we do on land obviously affects the spawning systems or the ability of these animals to spawn because of the riverine habitat, whether it be blocked by a dam or impacted by our land use and how it changes the river bodies so much in water quality and also our bottom habitat that's so important to these spawning activities. So there you go. Mike Dunlap confirmed that the Tapsco Bloody Dam is in Howard County and Baltimore County. Right in River Right is HOCO. Oh, all right. So we're talking about the Potomac, of course, and Fletcher's. And let me give one little plug to my good friends down here in Baltimore, because I was in the shop 2 weeks ago at Tockerman's Tackle, the nation's longest continuously operating tackle shop, where I highly recommend folks stopping in because I saw the entire just pile of shad flies and spoons and darts that they have downstairs, and then a great fly shop that they have upstairs as well. So it's really, really important to hear that that Tockerman's is a great resource for Baltimore anglers. And there are some shad showing back up in some of the different tributaries up here closer to Baltimore. So these fish are returning, are running all over the place, and are accessible to a lot of different anglers. So if you're not near DC and near the Potomac, make sure you check it out elsewhere. But so Tidal Potomac Slam, again, has a lot of different species that you can pursue. Once the shad are gone, what do you think folks should target, and what's the story there?
Well, I assume I'm talking. Nobody else is. Okay. I say it all the time that you should fish. You should absolutely be fishing after the shad run, and we see such an influx of business and boat rentals when those shad are there, and then as soon as the shad are gone, everything just kind of peters out, and it's a loss to anybody that's not fishing there. As the fishing can be June. I say it all the time, is one of my favorite months to fish. Early June. The hickory shad will be around until mid-May in kind of light numbers. They'll really start to phase out at the end of April. American shad will keep going strong until mid-May, sometimes into early June. Our schoolie striper bite has been very good the last few years. We're missing these larger class of fish, but our 14 to 24 inch fish are very active come mid-May and often into the first week of June. And I am often out there by myself and nobody else on the water and having 40, 50 fish days for schoolies. And I'd rather keep that to myself, but there it is. And the biodiversity that time of year is really amazing. Just the amount of fish. I mean, with the slam tournament, there's a species count, and you could probably fill that whole count sometime in late May if you wanted to. Walleye are very active in June for whatever reason. Our section of the Potomac is struggling in a lot of things, but our walleye fishery is doing really well. And over the last 5 years, I've had the pleasure of watching them get bigger and bigger, and now 27-inch fish are not uncommon. It's hard to catch a good 15, 16-inch eater, which I'd rather eat the small ones, but every time I catch one, it seems to be 23, 24, which is a little bit frustrating trying to throw something in a frying pan.
Sounds like John wants a phone call when it's time for walleyes.
But there can be a great smallmouth fishery there. It's a very unique smallmouth fishery, just being a tidal river. And the smallmouth have their own migration of their own this time of year, where they winter in tidal water, and they'll run up through Little Falls and go spawn in non-tidal Potomac. And come June, they filter back down to the deep, cool water that now has young of the year shad that have just hatched. So there's just a ton of bait, and that's why the walleye are thriving. And we do get some fat smallmouth because of that as well. And a lot of resident stripers up there that you can catch sometimes into June if you can find some faster, cooler water. Or into July rather.
So right out in front of Fletcher's, you have this. It seems to me you have the Cove, you have the current seam, the major current seam we talked about, and then what else is there from a structure component? Because in the areas I've fished upriver, I just don't have enough experience. I mean, I know there's these different rock ledges, and you can kind of imagine what it looks like underwater there.
Yeah,
I've never been.
up and down the Potomac, you have ledges. Harper's Ferry is a good example. If you pulled that up on a satellite image, you'd see ledges that run across the river. A similar thing is happening at Fletcher's with these ledges that run from one side to the other. And that hopefully kind of helps take away a little bit of the mystery of what's going on. I know it's a pretty deep river in a lot of spots. There's by Key Bridge, there are holes that are 80 feet deep. Same, going up to 60 feet as you get up towards Chain Bridge. And then right out front of Fletcher's is a relatively shallow 15 feet. So that is challenging to a lot of people. They're not used to fishing water like that. And I think that's a major holdup for a lot of people having success.
I think I found the Cove, right? There we are. Zooming in.
So you can't, our ledges here are underwater. You can't see them. So you have to learn how to read boils and just lines in the current. But as we get later into the season and our flows start to decline, you have to start going upriver where you're scrolling now. You can see how narrow the river gets. And up by Chain Bridge, the reason that bridge is built there is how narrow the river is. And you could throw a rock across the entire Potomac in that spot, which is always fascinating to me when you think about 2 miles downriver in Georgetown. I mean, it's, over a quarter mile wide. And then as you get up in non-tidal, it widens back out and flattens out quite a lot. So very unique area, which is why it's so fishy in the first place.
Yeah, so here's Little Falls. There's Chain Bridge. Yeah, nice tight canal there. And then, like you mentioned, it's down to Fletcher's, great access point. You can just see it plain as day as to why. And then you keep going downriver, and there it starts to widen out, deepen, be more of a kind of broad flow, still tidal, and turn into the bigger river we know right down by DC proper.
Yeah, one of the craziest things is if you ever look at a depth chart for the section of river around Fletcher's and these holes, there's I use Navionics for bass fishing, not striped bass, but largemouth bass fishing on big reservoirs. And if you look at the river, I mean, just the holes I showed it to a friend of mine who lives in Colorado and thought he knew big water, and it blew his mind to realize you're upstream of Great Falls there.
I was going to say, I'm not sure where I am. Oh, there's DC. I thought I was
there you go. But yeah, it's those holes it's the geology of this area is really fascinating. In terms of basically of geologists I know, as the way he explained it to me is that actually Great Falls has moved upriver over millions of years and left these giant holes behind it. There's one at American Legion Bridge that's well over 100 feet deep. So it's really a unique place in terms of its river bottom. That's also what makes it so dangerous.
Yeah.
Is the fact that you can be in 5 feet of water and then all of a sudden you're in 100 feet of water. Which is why, again, it's illegal to wade in the Potomac below Great Falls, is because of how unpredictable the river bottom is. And I grew up at Lock 7 and grew up sort of messing around on the river, and you can actually walk from one side of the Potomac to the other further upriver in the summer, hopping from gravel bars. But you also know that there's like some holes there that are incredibly deep. So it's really just a unique place.
Yeah, I'm sitting there scrolling around like a maniac, and here we are at Fletcher's. There's a little pin here somebody puts at spring catch and release shad fishing at Fletcher's on the Navionics map. And I can envision these giant holes right here, and it makes sense that this over eons, this waterfall is going to move its way upriver because it starts to erode what's underneath it and plunge those deep holes. And of course, the Earth has changed drastically over many periods of time, so it makes sense that history's kind of left its footprint here. And interesting little deep spots here that it's showing. Looks like it only says about 30 feet there, but I think the point is taken that there's this basic cavern underwater, and safety is paramount, of course, and a great way to
When you say only 30 feet, that speaks to just how deep it is in spots.
Yeah.
When we're out there shad fishing or striper fishing, we're only fishing 10, 15 feet of water, but you take that somewhere else, and that's really deep for a lot.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially for folks that are used to wading. And that's where I said it doesn't take much, obviously, to slip off any of these rocks and get into the deep. So be very, very careful. You're not supposed to be out there wading, like Andrew said. And here's the area that was in that other picture where you can see where the river as it flows down. There'd be an obvious seam right outside the cove mouth. And I assume that right down in here is about where somebody could launch with a kayak, or is it further up? I know it's kind of hard to see in this picture. Maybe I'll go back here.
Yeah, so you see that horseshoe, that's the parking lot. And then you just, at the end of the lot, John was talking about, you just park at the end, and exactly right
down there. And that point you had mentioned started with the W. That's
point. It's just, it's not much from satellite image, but that's it. That pinches the river just enough. It creates a beautiful seam that comes out there, and it makes shad fishing very accessible from the shore. If I were to take a boat down there, I would probably anchor about 10 feet off the bank.
Gotcha. So this spot right here is in the background of this picture.
Yep.
Right
there. Yep.
There you go. All right, folks. Well, so what are the other when's the first American shad going to be caught? Has it happened yet?
It already has happened.
Right.
There's been, this is a whole different topic, but just the restoration of the American shad in the Potomac has been a success. And year after year, they are just coming back earlier and stronger. And now the first one was caught just 3 days after the first hickory. And historically, it would have been 2 or 3 weeks after. So they mix in pretty good. They will last a lot. They will stay a lot longer than the hickory shad do. The hickory shad will start to really fade out by end of April. But you can have good numbers for Americans, certainly until mid-May, and then maybe have to work a little bit harder for them after that.
Right on. So Fletcher's Boathouse website, DC fishing licenses available online only. This is a change, right?
This is a change from last year, and it's a COVID response from DC to avoid contact and stuff like that. So historically, Fletcher's has sold 80% of every DC fishing license purchased on the year, but it is available online only. So do not come up to the shop and expect a license. So that's a big change for us.
And I know every state's a little bit different about how they handle a digital license. Let's say I pull up to Fletcher's Cove in the parking lot, I go my iPhone. Can I buy a license like that and then show that to an enforcement officer?
I certainly hope so, because that's what I did.
Okay.
Or just blame me if it doesn't work.
Well, and a lot of course, officers are looking out there for the egregious offenders. They're so reasonable when it comes to dealing with somebody that tried to do it right. But definitely, folks, check your regs. Look on this page, boatingindc.com. This is one place you can get your license, or you can get information, and here's the license link right here. So, of course, that's very important. You always have to buy your license, and those license fees help us manage the resource and help us maintain places like Fletcher's. Let's talk one last little bit about funding and how people can get involved and share their voice. Rob, Friends of Fletcher's Cove has some great information on their page about how to advocate on behalf of this resource. And so I know you mentioned a little bit earlier, but tell us what folks should be talking about now, who they can get involved with, who they can thank for being champions for the Cove.
Yeah, thank you. There's lots of good information on the background of the issue at Fletcher's Cove. I don't think we have our most recent step up there yet, which I just posted in the chat. I don't know if it's private just to us, David, or if other folks can see it. But it's an action alert that you can click that link. It will take you to just a simple web form that will pre-populate your member of Congress in the region. And it basically, if your member of Congress is someone who has been supportive of the Fletcher's efforts, it will say, thank you for taking the time to engage on this issue. Please continue to support as we move forward. And if it's someone who hasn't yet, it basically is a similar message, but urging to take some action. So right now we're making a number of funding requests, one through the Great American Outdoors Act, which passed last Congress, billions, trillions of dollars for improving infrastructure on national park land and forest land. So we're making a request for that funding. We think Fletcher's is a perfect candidate. And then we're also making requests through the general appropriation system by which Congress allocates a budget to run the country every year. And so, by signing on to this action alert, it really is super helpful because it demonstrates to those members just how many of their constituents really care about the issue. I understand there's, of course, a lot of people from Maryland on here, but if anyone from Virginia is listening by chance, we could really use support from Virginia. The Maryland delegation has been great, I think, in large part because of the kind of conservation stewardship ethos that we're seeing here tonight. But Virginia, they're just on the other side of the river from Fletcher's, but we've had some trouble getting them engaged. So anything you do here is going to be super helpful, but especially if you're from VA. And then I think there's a donation link too that is available on the website, so you can go there. And then, of course, to echo Andrew's reminders, just sign up for the tournament. Spreads awareness. It is a little bit of money that will be going to the Friends of Fletcher's Cove. So thank you, Andrew, for coordinating all that.
So and both those links are also, if you go to the Tidal Potomac Slam website, you not the tournament page, but the website. If you go to the bottom, you'll see both the action alert link and the donate link. So if you're signing up for the tournament, you can just go there as well and hit those buttons, and you can donate to FFC through our website as well if you happen to be on the tournament website already.
Absolutely, yeah. And John just shared in the comments that he spoke with CCA Northern Virginia, and I'm directly connected with those guys, of course, as a great CCA chapter in Northern Virginia. They're great partners in supporting the Tidal Potomac Slam. So, John, I'd like to be in on the conversation as well and continue to help in Maryland as much as we can. It's good to hear that our representatives are taking this issue up and focusing on it, and it's important for everybody. And heck, even if you're outside of Maryland and Virginia, realize that your voice matters too. Trout Unlimited has a tremendous presence, doing great work across our country for our cold water species. What happens upriver flows downriver. It impacts the tidal fisheries that I mostly focus on and we focus on at CCA, and all that even affects the oceans. We're all in this together. It's all one big system. And, anglers are definitely strong-minded folks. I know we take to social media quite often and you see a lot of debate over things, but realize we're all in it together, and we all have to step up for what's right and share our opinion. It's really important to weigh in and provide respectful guidance to folks. Share your perspective. Your perspective matters, and your involvement in organizations like TU, CCA, supporting Friends of Fletcher's Cove, renting boats from Alex and Fletcher's Boathouse. They're all just key parts of the system that supports conservation in our country. There's some pretty interesting stuff we're going to talk about at future advisory commission meetings here in Maryland. I'm the vice chairman of the Sportfish Advisory Commission, and we hope to be talking about some new increase in excise dollars, which are coming back to the state of Maryland. I think the initial estimate I saw was something like $600,000 extra dollars coming back all through the various excise tax programs that are generate dollars through new boat sales, boat fuel, fishing tackle, buying our licenses, and our activities on the water. So while we saw a spike in the outdoor activity once COVID, we could see that we could get outside safely during the pandemic. There was a spike in activity, which can bring conservation concerns. But our community, unlike any other, directly pays for the conservation and management of our resources. And we're going to be working with Maryland DNR to try and identify some priorities to help have that extra money support. And if we can responsibly use our resources and protect them and conserve them, realize that letting these fish go is often a great way to ensure they're there for the future, especially the ones you can legally keep. Use that ethic and move us forward, because it's a system that works when we all respect each other and respect the resource first, and really pay attention to our impact on the environment, on our water quality, and on habitat. And so we're all in this together, and I want to thank you guys for joining us tonight. It's been a great chat, and I'm pretty excited to go shad fishing. I'm going to have to see if I can't create a meeting space on the river with Alex or Mike or any of you guys to talk about some policy stuff. We'll distance each other properly and all that, and have some fun, because I'm feeling some shad. What do y'all think? Want to get out on the river together?
Let's do it.
Sure. Well,
Yeah, let's do it.
Heck yeah. Well, anybody that has a boat, head on down to Fletcher's. If you can toss your kayak in off the parking lot there, check out Alex, check out the website. You can run upriver with your motorboat. And Alex, we're going to do a blue catfish day as part of the invasives count because I want to get some stomach content data and some great information about to support management and understand what these blue catfish are doing in the Potomac. I know they've been in the Potomac for quite some time, but they're spreading throughout other Maryland waters, and they're pretty much everywhere in the Chesapeake at this point. So that's one thing I can guarantee we'll do together. And I know there's one thing we haven't mentioned yet, and it is a celebration that's largely up in the air because of the pandemic and everything else. We all know you can't plan long-term anymore right now. But at the end of this tournament, Fletcher's Fest, what is this all about?
The goal is to go forward to Sunday, September 19th. It'll be entirely outdoors. If it does happen, we are trying to, our hope is that, no additional outbreaks, vaccination rates, that the Park Service will allow us to have the public event. We are waiting on confirmation. But yes, that's the goal is Fletcher's Fest Sunday, September 19th. It may not actually be at Fletcher's this year, depending on Park Service and kind of what happens, but that is the plan as of right now.
Fantastic. Well, we'll look forward to that. I can't wait to promote it through CCA Maryland's platforms. Guys, I just want to thank you so much for being passionate anglers, doing the great work that you do. I know it's never easy, and it takes extra effort across the board, and kudos to you for doing that. And thanks for coming here tonight to talk to our listening audience. Folks that don't listen live can still listen to this on our YouTube platform anytime or watch it, and I'll share it out in our newsletters. Make sure you check out all the different links we've provided tonight, and check out TU, NCTU, and or NCCTU, Fletcher's Boathouse, the Tidal Potomac Slam, everything we've talked about tonight. Friends of Fletcher's Cove. Thank you all, and I hope to see you down at the Cove very soon. And obviously, anybody, you have a tremendous resource with these folks, so reach out to them anytime. And thanks for following along tonight.
Thanks, Dave.